Alright guys, just a quick note before we get into this tutorial. This is a long one, but if you are dedicated and committed to learning Unreal Engine and you love it, I would highly recommend watching this. This is very, very useful. There's a lot of new functions in here that we haven't covered. Some really useful content in here. So it is going to be a big tutorial, and it's going to be hard to stick in there at some points, but I do encourage you to watch the whole thing. And once you've finished and you've implemented it, it's going to be super cool and you can play around with it. Anyways, onto the tutorial. What's going on, guys? Today I want to be bringing you a concept that I've been working on for quite some time now. And the reason that it has been a little while in the making, this video, is because when it comes to Unreal Engine C++, there really isn't a lot of resources out there. In fact, if you go to the Answer Hub, you'll see people ask questions all the time and they almost never get answered. And there's just such a lack of knowledge out there and people sharing their knowledge. And so it's really hard to pick up new knowledge. But anyways, I figured out how to do bullet penetration. It took quite a while to learn this, but here we are, we're bringing this to you. And if I come into the level here, I have a bunch of objects that I've set up as penetrable objects. So here we have some pillars which I can shoot through. I've declared these as being penetrable. This table here, I have declared that as being penetrable, which means we can shoot through it. This object here, this little cylinder, I can shoot through this. This square is just a normal static mesh, so I have not declared this as a penetrable material, so I cannot shoot through it. So if I shoot this actor normally, you can see it does 30 damage. Oh, and another thing I added is these little bullet holes. I thought they were kind of cool, so I'll show you guys how to make those as well. Anyways, if I try to shoot through that cube, it does not work, because if I click on this cube, in the outliner here you can see this is just a static mesh actor. However, if I click on this, this is a penetrable material. Now, penetrable material is not in Unreal Engine. We actually made this class ourselves, so I'll show you how to make that and do some stuff with those. So, in fact, let's make a new penetrable material just to show you guys what this will look like once you've finished this tutorial. So we can drag this in, and say I want my penetrable material to just be a, we'll just make it another pillar, right? So drag a pillar in, and click on this, and we'll set the resistance. So let's just say that this pillar here is made out of solid gold. Well, obviously a bullet is going to have a very, very tough time piercing through solid gold. So I'm going to set the resistance to 20, which is a very high resistance. So if we play the game now and shoot through that, you can see it only does 1 damage. It does a single damage when we shoot through this pillar. So you can set the resistance of the material, so how much resistance the material has, how much it's going to slow down your bullet, and how much it's going to affect the bullet's damage. So if I shoot a material, we do 30 damage. As you can see, we can't shoot through this one. This one, again, we can do 30 damage. If we shoot through the pillar here, you can see it only does 6 damage because this pillar is set up with a resistance of 5, which means that the damage gets cut in 5. The system also supports multiple penetration, so if I shoot through, you can see it only does 1 damage, because penetrate through 2 solid pillars is obviously going to be pretty difficult. You know, it's going to slow down your bullet a lot, so we're only doing 1 damage. Then finally I have this table set up with a penetration resistance of 2, which means that the damage is cut in half. So if I shoot through that, we're only doing 15 damage. And finally I have this thing here, and I think I set this to like 10 or something, so yeah, it's only doing 3 damage. So anyways, I'm going to show you guys how to set this all up. It's very exciting. I'm sure you guys are going to like it. I'll also show you how to do the bullet hole system. I would expect this tutorial to be about 30 to 40 minutes because it is quite a long, big concept. But anyways, I'll see you guys over at the first part. Alright, so before we get started on the project, there are a couple of assets we're going to need to import. We just need to set some things up. So first thing we're going to do is come into content here and right click and go new folder, and we're going to make a folder called textures. And we're going to make another folder called materials. And the difference between textures and materials, if you didn't know, is a texture is a PNG or a JPEG or whatever, and a material is an actual. You can actually apply it to a shape. It's got lots of different information in it, bump maps, light maps, speculars, things like that. So that is the difference between materials and textures. Anyways, we're going to click on our textures folder. And then I will have these two textures linked. We have a mask and a base color. So these are the bullet hole ones. And if you're wondering why it says T underscore, well, T means texture, and then the BC is base color, and M is mask. And the reason that we have these is basically it's a naming convention. So we can take one look at this, and just by the name we can tell, oh, this is a base color, or oh, this is a mask. So you can actually get some idea about what's happening inside of the file without having to go have a look at it. So we're going to take these and drag these into our textures folder, and we will now go into materials and go right click, material, and we're going to call this M underscore bullet hole. Right. And double click on that material to open up the material editor. The first thing we're going to do is go to material domain and select deferred decal, because the bullet on the wall is basically just going to be in a decal form. Okay, so now what we need to do is add a texture sample. So add one of those in. And also go into the blend mode and change that to emissive, and that gives us emissive color and opacity. First thing we need to do is select this texture sample, and then I'm going to go T underscore bullet and select the base color and drag that into emissive color. And the next thing we're going to do is right click and add another texture sample. And we're going to add the mask. So add that one there. And then we simply just drag that into opacity. So now we have our bullet hole decal. So if we save that and then close that, we're now ready. So, and if I drag this into the scene, by the way, it will show up as an emissive decal. Now, keep in mind that in its current state it's way too big, but we'll fix that up later. So let's just go ahead and delete that for now. And so once you've got all that done, you are ready to start. So I'll see you in the next clip. Alright, so the first thing we're going to get into is how to do a raycast. And you guys will already know how to do a raycast, but in this case, we're actually going to be doing a line trace multi, which allows us to collide with multiple objects, and that's how we're going to achieve the bullet penetration. So, the first thing we're going to do is come into C++ classes and open up my character. And inside of the onFire function here, we will get rid of some of the stuff. We won't get rid of the animation and sound stuff, but we will get rid of firing a projectile. We're not going to need that anymore. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is just we'll start off by making an array to store all our hit results in. So let's go ahead and type out here initialize hit results array. I'm going to make sure this is really well commented, because this is going to be a very long function. By the time we're done, the onFire function will probably be nearly 100 lines, something like that. It's going to be a very complex function, so we need to make sure that we comment everything very nicely. So let's start by saying T array. So we're making an array of if hit results, and hit results. There we go, we've made our array. Now we're going to initialize 10 spaces inside of our hit results array. So we'll say hit results.init, and we're going to initialize it with f hit result objects and pass in force in it, and then 10, so we're initializing 10 slots inside of our hit results array. Okay, the next thing to do would be to get the start and end traces, so get start and end traces. So we'll start by getting the start trace, so first person camera component get component location. So that is the start of where we're going to begin our line trace. And now we need the end trace. So let's get the end trace. To do that, we're going to say first person camera component get forward vector. So that gets the vector in front of the player. And then we're going to multiply that by, let's just go 2000. So that'll do 2000 units in front of the player. And then we're going to add start trace to that. Okay, so we've declared our start and end traces, and we've initialized the hit results array. Next thing to do would be to set up the collision query and response params. So I'm going to set up collision query and collision response params. So if collision query params trace params equals new if collision query params. And then we're going to change it here. We're going to say that we want to turn trace complex off, so trace complex equals false. And then if collision response parameters, so if collision response params. This is a new one that we didn't use in the other gun tutorial. So response params, I'm going to pass in E collision response ECR overlap. And that's going to allow us to perform bullet penetration and get multiple actors returned. Finally, let's perform the line trace. So to do that, I'm going to say if, actually let's just say get world line trace multi by channel, hit results, the start of the trace, the end of the trace. We're going to pass an ECC visibility for our collision channel, and then we're going to pass in trace params by reference, and then response params. And that has just cast a line trace for us. Now I'm going to declare a damage amount, and I'm going to set the base damage to being 30, just like I did in the little demo that I gave at the start. And then we can slowly lower the damage if we hit something or something like that. So I'm just going to leave it there. Don't think... You know what, let's get the bullet hole system working. So to get the bullet holes working, we can add a little private section in here. And we're going to add a U property, edit anywhere, and this will allow us to set the bullet hole in the editor. We could do it in code, but I just like to do it in the editor. So category equals bullet decal. And then we'll say U material interface bullet hole decal. And we've created this, so we can go and set this in the editor when we want. So let's just compile this, and we can keep writing code while we compile it. Whoops. We want a U material interface. Okay. So the next step, what we want to do is go through and process all of the actors. So to process all of the actors, you can use either a range-based loop or you can just use a standard loop. I'm going to use a standard loop because I've had some trouble with the range-based ones. So we're going to say x is equal to 0 if x is not equal to hit results.num. Increment x. And so inside of this loop we can start processing some of the results. The first thing we're going to do is just check if we've hit a static mesh. I'll just come in here, process each hit result in our array. Perform line trace. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just see if we've hit a static mesh or not. If we have hit a static mesh, we can stop processing results straight away because we know we've hit a solid wall, and so that's the end of the bullet's path, right? The bullet hit the solid wall and it's not going anywhere, so we can just stop processing the rest of our hit results. So let's say a static mesh actor. I'm not sure why we can't access that. We might have to go into source. Let's just go into source penetration.h and change that to engine.h. That might be the problem. So once we have that, I'm going to say potential solid material, and I call it a potential solid material. We don't really know if this is a solid material or not yet, but we're going to cast it into a static mesh and see if it is, right? So we'll say cast a static mesh actor, and then we'll cast each actor. Right. Okay, so if potential solid material is not equal to null, so if we have hit something solid, it will not be equal to null, so we can go ahead and break. Let's just I always like to check if the potential solid material is not pending kill. And then if that happens, we just break from the loop, and that will stop processing more actors, right? Just makes sense to stop processing actors at that point. So we've done the solid wall. Now we need to see if we've hit a penetrable wall, but I haven't added that class yet, so we won't do that yet. Let's continue on adding bullet holes really quick, because we can implement this quite easily. We'll come into a little private section here and say void create bullet hole. And this is going to take an if hit result object. So this is the object that we have hit with our line trace, and because we're using this object, we then know where to create the bullet hole, if that makes sense. I'm just going to put a little comment here so I remember what this does. This function creates a bullet hole in the on the location we have hit. Sorry, at the location we have hit. Okay, right click this, quick actions, and create a definition of this function. And then we can begin implementing what we have here. Now, something really important that we need to do is actually check if we have hit anything. Because if we haven't hit anything and we're trying to create a bullet hole on nothing, it's not going to work. It's going to, crash a game or whatever. So the first thing I want to do is just up here, I'm going to create the bullet hole. I'm passing that by reference. Okay, so we're going to say that if hit results dot num is greater than 0. So if there is something inside of our hit results array, then we can go ahead and create a bullet hole. So if we've hit something, create a bullet hole. If we haven't hit anything, then don't worry about creating a bullet hole. Now, the bullet hole is really easy to add. I'm going to put the function for it. Where have I put it? This is where I added the function. Okay, we'll just copy and paste that in there. And we'll go ahead and paste that in under our on fire just so we know where it is. Okay, so we've got that function there, and now we need to go ahead and create the bullet hole. So let's do that now. So to create a bullet hole, the first thing we need to do is actually just check if the bullet hole has been initialized. So we're going to say if bullet hole decal. And in fact, I actually like to type if it is not equal to null. You can just type if bullet hole decal, but it looks a little bit more readable if you put not equal to null, in my opinion. So we're going to say if vector bullet hole size equals if vector, and I'm just going to pass in 3.5, 7, and 7. And what this is going to do is just make our bullet a lot smaller, like the actual size of a bullet. Now we're going to use the uGameplayStatics function, so uGameplayStatics spawn decal at location, and we're going to give it getWorld. I'm going to give it the bullet hole decal, the size, so bullet hole size. The object that we've hit, we want to get the impact point and use that as the location. And then the rotation, we want to get the impact normal dot rotation. And then there's a lifespan, and we're going to set this to 5, in fact we'll do 10 seconds, so that after 10 seconds our bullet holes leave the wall, they disappear, right? Because obviously we don't want our bullet holes to stay there forever. So now that we've got that, we should now have working bullets, which is pretty cool. So if we compile this, I would be interested to see if this will work straight away. There might be something else we need to add, but I feel like that's all we need to add working bullet holes, so that should be quite a nice addition. And actually, anyways, I'll come back when everything's compiled and we can get started on the next section. Alright guys, so we've just compiled. And if I select my character here, come into bullet decals, and apply m underscore bullet hole, I can now shoot the wall and have bullets come up. So, as you can see, fully works. We can now shoot the wall, and after 10 seconds, those bullets will disappear. And I haven't set a fade distance on them, so they do fade out relatively quickly. Anyways, the next thing we're going to implement is the target, because the target is quite easy to make. So let's go new C++ class actor, and we're going to add a class which we will call target. And I'll add the bullet penetration class last, or the penetrable material class last. That is actually one of the easier classes. Alright, so let's come into target.h, and there are a couple of functions we need to add. So the first one is going to be void damage target. And we'll need this function to be public because we'll be accessing it from outside of the class. That will take a parameter int32 damage, and we're going to add a little comment in here. We'll just say this function is used to damage a target when it is struck by a bullet. and then we'll add an at param. So at param damage. This is the amount of damage to hit the target with. And there we go. Next we'll add some private variables. We're going to add int32 health. And I believe that's all we need. Actually, we'll have the uText render component. Alright, so we've got the health text. The next thing we're going to add is the static mesh. And this will be target mesh. And we're also going to expose this to the editor, like so. Alright, cool. So we'll right click, quick actions, implement damage target. Like I said, damage target is going to be very, very simple. And there's actually one other function we're going to add in here. We're going to add another function called void on destroy, which can also be a private function since we're not accessing this outside of the class. So we'll go void on destroy. Cool. So in here we're going to say that the health of the target, take damage off the health. Then we'll say if the health is less than or equal to 0, then call the onDestroy function. So if our target's health is less than or equal to 0, we destroy the target, right? So let's implement that onDestroy function. And by default, I'm not going to add any more functionality to this. We're just going to call the destroy function inside of there right now. We can add some more stuff to that later. Say we want our target to blow up or something, we can do that later. So in the constructor for our target, let's initialize some values. We're going to say... actually, we'll also add one more function. Void make text face player. Okay, so let's initialize the text first. So health text equals create default subobject uText render component. And what we'll do is we'll pass in some description, so health text or whatever. And then we'll set some of the properties up for this, so health text, set world size, and we'll set the size to 50. We'll also set the color, set text render color, and I'm going to set the color to red, because why not? Okay, so we set up the health text. Let's go ahead and set up the static mesh now. So target mesh equals create default subobject use static mesh component target mesh. And I think that's really it for now. We'll just initialize the mesh, we'll initialize that other stuff. Inside of the tick function, we're going to call the make text face player function, and then we'll implement that. And once we implement this function, that's pretty much the entire target class finished. All we're doing here is we say we'll need to add the player, so up here we're going to say include penetration character .h. And we're going to say a penetration character equals cast, and a penetration character, and we will cast that using new gameplay statics. Get player character, this and 0. So that gets a reference to the player. And now we're just going to say if rotator new rotation equals character get actor rotation. And then change the yaw by 180 degrees. And then set the health text, set relative rotation to the new rotation. And there we go. So that is everything for that, I believe, I want to say. So let's go ahead and save that. And we'll go ahead and try this out, see if it works. Oh, actually, on begin play, let's also set the health text. Set the text. I'm going to pass if string printf. I'm going to say health is equal to %d, and then after that we just pass in the health, so that's going to display the health. And we'll also refresh the health whenever the player gets hit. So every time we damage the player, show the new health, basically. In fact, I'm going to put that inside of here, just to make sure it's not showing the health if it is negative. Alright, so I believe that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and save that. And we'll start by trying to drag a target in. We'll have to compile this, so yeah, I'll stop recording and I'll come back when we're finished compiling. Alright, so we've just compiled, and if I drag my target into the scene, it works fine. So if I click on target mesh, I'm going to give my target a mesh, and I'm just going to make it a sphere like I showed you in the first little part of this video. So let's move this up a little bit, get the text floating up nice and high, and then we'll move the mesh down so it's underneath there. Okay, so there's one problem right now. If I hit play, you can see that health is equal to 0, and that's because I didn't set the target's health. And in fact, let's also set one more thing. Under the target, we want to go into health text, set I believe it's, I think it's alignment actually. Yeah, set horizontal alignment, and we're going to pass an EHTA center. And now that'll center the text, and also we need to set the target's health to be 100 by default. So I didn't set that either. So those are two things we just need to add. So we'll just recompile. That should compile quite fast this time. And the text should now be centered and shouldn't rotate on a wrong axis. Looks a little bit better. See here. Make sure everything looks a little bit nicer and lines up properly. There we go, so that should do. So now if I shoot the actor, right now it does nothing, and that's okay. We haven't set it up to do anything yet. So let's come into our project. We'll go into the on-fire method, and now finally we can actually do damage to our targets. So do we comment in here? Like I said, I want to keep this nice and tidy, nice and commented. So check if we have hit a solid wall if we have, we can stop processing hit results. Alright. Secondly, check if we've hit a penetrable material, and haven't added anything there yet. And then thirdly, check if we've hit a target. If we have, apply damage. So what we're going to do in here is we will try to cast into a target. So let's see here, a target, and we need to add this. So include target.h. A target potential target equals cast a target, and we're casting hit results at x.actor.get. Excuse me. So whatever we've hit, we're going to try to cast it into a target. Now if we have hit a target, the cast will be successful, and so we can say here, if potential target is not equal to null, and potential target is pending kill, except we want to put an exclamation mark at the front, so that inverts it. So is it not pending kill, basically? If it isn't pending kill and it is not null, we can then say potential target damage target and apply damage amount. So remember, we've declared the damage amount to be 30, and we can alter that depending on whether or not we have hit a penetrable wall or not, because obviously hitting a penetrable wall is going to lower the amount of damage that we've done. So that is the last thing we need to do. The final thing we need to do is simply create the penetrable material class. So let's right click, new class. Once we've added this, we are fully done. We can wrap this tutorial up and we've finished adding bullet penetration, which is a really, really cool feature to have in your game. So anyways, let's go penetrable material, and we'll create this class. Again, this is just going to be an actor. And penetrable material is a really quick class. It does not take a lot of effort to implement. So let's see here, come into our penetrable material class. Now it has a couple of components. Actually, it just has one component. It has add a private section. We'll add a U property with edit anywhere on it, and this is going to be the mesh for the penetrable material. So did I say materiable? I meant material. I apologize. Okay, so anyways, we've added that. Now we need to add the amount of resistance that the material has. So I'm going to make this public. Edit anywhere. int32 material resistance. And why do we comment just to explain what this does? The higher this number is, the more the material will lower bullet damage. Alright, so there we go. That's pretty much the penetrable.h. Now we just need to add the stuff in the CBP. And all we're adding is some default values. So by default, set resistance to 2. I'm going to say material resistance equals 0.2f. Oh, sorry, 2.f. And actually it should just be 2 because it's not a float. We'll just make it 2. Alright, and then we need to initialize the mesh. So material mesh equals create default subobject u static mesh component text material mesh. And there we go, we've added the material mesh and the resistance. So all we need to do now is use this. So let's go to our character and check if we've actually hit a penetrable material. So did I really just say it again? That has to be like a third time this video. I'm so sorry. Okay. Anyways, let's add the penetrable material. I can say that right. There we go. So that's all added, and now we can use that. So come into our function, and I did tell you guys this is going to be a long function. This is like 100 lines or so of code. So let's say a penetrable material. Potential pin material equals cast into a penetrable material, and then again hit results at x.actor.get. Okay, so if we have hit a penetrable material, it will not be null. So if potential pin material is not equal to null, and potential pin material is not pending kill, then the damage amount is now equal to damage amount divided by the potential materials resistance. So material resistance. And there we go. And if you want to be very snazzy, you could get a get method for this, so it would be get material resistance, but I'm just accessing it directly. But that's basically it. Now, I'll also just draw a nice little debug line, because why not? For testing purposes, let's draw a debug line. So draw debug line. Oops. Get world. Start trace. End trace. Red. Make everything red. And then false and 5 seconds. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's it. I think that's everything. Now that is a lot of stuff to remember, guys. I know it's a hell of a function, but that is essentially the steps to creating something that we can penetrate in C++. So compile that. Let's add a object now. And for some reason it has a collision component. There's a sphere collision component. Could have sworn we didn't add anything like that. That is super weird. I'm gonna assume it still works. Projectile movement. Oh, I dragged in a projectile. What am I doing? Material. There we go. So let's find our material. There we go. So if we select material mesh, and then select, let's just go with a pillar. And let's make the resistance for our material 5, so it cuts the damage by 5. So if we hit play and shoot it, it takes off some health and casts a nice little couple of bullets on there. You can see the bullets don't actually move because the actor moves right now, so that's something we'll need to fix. But decals can't be placed on moving actors as of right now. Anyways, so let's just shoot it. As you can see, we are penetrating, and there we have it. Finally, after a long time, we've finally done it. Just a quick note, you may have noticed the bullet holes there were a little bit off, and the reason for that is because decals work best on static meshes, and as of right now, I am fairly certain, I read some of the documentation on decals, and I'm fairly sure they cannot move around. So you might want to check if it's a static mesh before you go hitting it with a bullet hole or anything like that. But anyways, guys, that's it. I know it was a huge tutorial. If you have stuck in this long, thank you very much. I hope I have given you guys some value. I hope this has been of use and you've learned a lot from it. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one.